This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Ohio University tight ends coach Brian Metz. Coach Metz shares his unique journey to collegiate coaching, discusses the importance of creating a game plan for networking, and highlights key reasons for establishing a growth mindset. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Change the game. It's not just words. It's what we do every single day, regardless of sport, regardless of skill level. Field turf was built on innovation, dating back to our invention of long-piled infield turf, which revolutionized the industry. Today, we offer a series of game-changing fibers, high-performance infills, sport-specific applications, and smart field technology. And we've done our homework, thoroughly testing all our products so that they offer leading quality and safety. We invest in quality materials, quality manufacturing, and quality teams to deliver sustainable services supported by the industry's leading service team and best insured warranty. We design and manufacture the canvas upon which your program's history will be written. Our team of over 800 employees is made of ASBA certified field builders, civil engineers, designers, and more. We've built over 20,000 fields worldwide for organizations at all levels. As a member of the Tarkett sports family, Field Turf is a global leader with unprecedented financial support and experience. We can offer a variety of surfacing solutions through our family's leading brands. From running tracks to tennis courts, indoor gymnasium, and hybrid or residential turf, the Tarkett sports family has the right system for you. Field Turf. Let's change the game together.
Coach Metz, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing good, man. I sure appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. Super excited and ready to let our members and our listeners learn more about you and the Ohio program.
Of course. Anytime the AFCA calls, I got to answer. So I'm happy to do it.
Awesome, man. Well, let's rewind back real quick before we kind of talk about what's going on with you now. You have a very interesting, compelling, unique start to your coaching career. I don't want to spoil it with any teasers. Why don't you just kind of break down how you got into the game, your history, and how you've made it to where you are now? Yeah.
Thanks for asking. I made it to this point now through a lot of volunteering. Some people would call it the grind. I really enjoyed it, so it doesn't seem like a grind when you're in it.
Right.
But yeah, I came about being a college football coach in a different way than a lot of people do. My playing career ended when I was a senior in high school. Played for an excellent head coach at an awesome high school in Knoxville, Tennessee, Knoxville Catholic. We won the state championship my senior year, went 15-0, learned a ton about the game of football through my teammates and coaches. But that was the end of the road for my playing career. And I went to the University of Notre Dame and started volunteering as an equipment manager. I love being around the team, loves team sports. My dad coached pretty much every sport, youth sport, when I was growing up. And I love the aspect of being on a team and fighting for a goal together. And I just didn't want to give that up, even though my time on the field was done. So I worked with equipment at Notre Dame before starting to volunteer as a high school coach at a local high school while I was still in undergrad. And then I made my way to Ohio University in 2015, where I started working as basically a graduate student assistant. So we've got a great tradition at Ohio University of teaching young people who want to be coaches or want to get involved in a game, whether it be recruiting or ops, to be a part of our student assistant program. And I was welcomed in 2014, and then started my career from there. So I've been a boomerang employee of Ohio University. I started off as a student assistant. I eventually became a graduate assistant here before becoming a full-time coach, responsible for the tight ends, being hired a little over a year ago now.
Man, that's awesome. I love hearing all the different stories. And to be honest, like everybody's is unique, but oftentimes they kind of start off with oh, hey, I called my old coach up from college and said, hey, I want the GA. It's kind of a connection that usually stems from in college, but you were hungry to be in that setting and took advantage of it. So that's great, man.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously when you have a start where, like I said, you don't have that network of coaches already because you played for 10 or 11 guys that kind of spread out by the time you're done with your career. Networking becomes huge, right? Networking and getting to meet coaches at other schools becomes huge because your network is initially very, very small. Could you talk a little bit about the term that I've heard you use a couple times in the past is networking up and networking out? Could you explain the difference, what they are, and how they've helped your career?
Absolutely. Just like you said, I didn't have a dozen or more high school teammates or college teammates that went on to, coaching careers or working in college football, but I did have one. And I'd actually like to talk about that specifically is Jeff Ferris, who's the tight ends coach at Duke.
Right.
He and I were high school teammates.
Wow.
And so as he went to Duke, he's a year older than me. As he went to Duke and then started his coaching career as a graduate assistant, and then became the wide receivers coach there. He was one of the few people that I knew that was doing what I wanted to do. And so Jeff's where I learned the young guy network term. That's what he would call it. But it's the idea of, you don't necessarily need to be chasing around the head coaches with your resume. You need to be really digging in with the people who are at your level, so to speak, who are still trying to learn the game and get their footing in the industry. And he was very generous with his time early on. I came and visited him. He and Matt Guerreri, who's now the DC at Duke,
right.
They were both graduate assistants at the time. And I was a volunteer student assistant at Ohio. I was working with the quarterbacks. Jeff was with the receivers and Matt was with the DBs. And through that interaction, going and visiting them, I met a handful of other young coaches who have either continued to grow at Duke or gone out from there. And so, the idea of networking out is just that. It's building the network through genuine relationships. It's a friend of a friend. It's the person that you meet at a clinic, meet at a convention, see at a camp, and following up with those people. And some of those relationships blossom, and some of them are just a familiar face, and that's okay too. But the idea is that you want to have people that you're looking up to, that you're being mentored by. You also want to give back to the game and help young coaches who are just trying to figure out what they're getting themselves into, who might be a couple steps behind you or a couple ladder rungs behind you. And at the same time, it's really important not to forget about the people who are at your level, so to speak, who are going to be in the industry with you for the next 30, 40 years, hopefully.
Man, that's awesome that, you mentioned mentoring, younger coaches and having those people that mentor you as well. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but, specifically, Jeff Ferris, what an amazing name to drop. Number one, he's a huge friend to the AFCA. He spoke for us, and, those guys on that staff, both guys you mentioned there actually started as GAs. I believe they both played at Duke, if I'm not mistaken, but I know they started as GAs, moved up to full-time positions or, heading down to that coordinator path. And it's just very interesting that that's exactly kind of how your career is going there at Ohio, just working your way up. And, that is a very unique thing. And your little circle, at least those initial guys are all kind of moving in that direction. So that's awesome, man. Been able to connect with those guys like that and continue to expand on that network. Now, talking about expanding on the network, the AFCA convention, obviously, tons of educational opportunities there, but the hidden opportunity at the annual convention is the opportunity to network. And I know that you don't just go there to learn and rub elbows and high five with Jeff and those other guys. You kind of go there with a strategic plan. I've heard you talk about it a little bit. I'd love for our listeners to hear about how you approach the AFCA convention to help this networking up and networking out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I haven't missed an AFCA annual convention since 2014 when I first became a member. Well, I've been fortunate. Most of them have been either, I guess, close to the Southeast. So my family's from Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm in Southeast Ohio, or in Texas.
That's right.
My wife is from Weatherford, so those have been really convenient for the family. But I haven't missed one. And you're right. The point is to go in with a game plan, just like you would if you were, leading a team or coordinating an offense or defense. You want to know what you're trying to get out of it. And sometimes I'm just trying to gain knowledge at a new position or a new assignment that I'm looking to take over as a part of my staff. This past year was my first year coaching a special teams unit. Coach Solich asked me to be in charge of the kickoff return unit. And so you better believe over the last year, I was reading and watching and listening to everything I could get my hands on because, I was a fish out of water.
Right.
I didn't play tight end. I played receiver. So when Coach Albin, our offensive coordinator, asked me to be the tight ends coach, that was obviously based off of his belief and trust in my ability to get the job done and to teach and help the young guys grow. But, there was a lot I didn't know. And so there are times when I approach the AFCA convention strictly from a, information gathering standpoint, going to speakers, finding tight ends on the list and going to that room and making sure I got my pen and paper. And then there's other times when I may be out of a job. I've been out of a job for 2 AFCA conventions. And my main goal is to shake as many hands as possible and make sure as many people know what I'm looking for. And so, for me, I've got that young guy network or those people that are mentors or mentoring. I've been at 3 institutions, 3 colleges over my short career so far. And so there's a handful of people that I've worked with previously that I just got to see because, it's the one time during the year that we're going to have a chance to be in the same building. And so the way I approach the convention is I typically stratify people, into, hey, these are the people I have to see no matter if I'm, eating dinner with somebody else or grabbing drinks with someone else. When they give me a phone call, I'm going to meet them where they are. And so that's the head coaches I've worked for before, or, the closest friends that I never get a chance to see outside of the convention. And then from there, the list goes on. So there might be some people that I text on day 2 and say, hey, I want to meet up today. And that way I'm letting people know that I'm in town, and that they're a priority to me. And then I want to make sure that we connect. And, if you don't get a chance to see somebody, or even if it's very brief, a handshake in the hallway, always make sure I follow up with a phone call or a text or a note afterward, just to say it was nice to see you. And that's usually based off the quality of the relationship. Right. If it's a texting friend, then it's just a text. But if it's hey, offensive coordinator from such and such school, that's a friend of a friend, it was great to make the connection with you. And like I said earlier, if those relationships blossom, that's great. And if they're just a friendly face that you have seen at a future convention or at a future camp or on the road recruiting, then that's a benefit too.
Absolutely, man. That convention is so special. The relationships that are started there and maintained there. Like you mentioned, oftentimes it's the only opportunity you get to see some of these guys in the profession that you know really well is that one time a year. So making the most of that. Now, while you were speaking there, you made mention of you went to a couple conventions without a job, and I've had the unfortunate opportunity to do that once, and unfortunately it was right after I think all coaches can kind of relate to that first convention where you walk in there and you're seeing the guys that you see on the sideline on TV that first convention. You're like, it's so many people here. How am I going to make it? Like, how am I going to climb the ladder here? And, after a few conventions under your belt, you start to get comfortable. You're starting to know people. People are coming up and talking to you. And I was right in that place. And then next thing you know, the next year I don't have a job. And it was almost like a first time again. You're walking there like, I got to get the next gig. How have you approached those situations, when you didn't have a job, because it is a different feel. You don't have a badge. Your badge doesn't say anything on it. You don't know what gear to wear. How did you approach that?
When you're not wearing any logo.
Yeah, that's
right. It's dependent on the situation, but the biggest thing that, you have to have some sense of clarity of what your best next opportunity is going to be, if that makes sense. So, based off of previous relationships that you have, you're probably not going to get your next job by just being the guy that shakes as many hands as possible,
right.
And makes as many first meetings as possible. That may pay dividends in the long run. But ultimately, if you're looking for a job, there's probably a few key people in your corner that have been there with you for years, that you need to make sure that you spend some quality time with.
Right.
Because there is, the fraternity is great, and rubbing elbows, like you said, and hanging out with the people that you don't get a chance to see. There's a time and place for that. But ultimately, if you're going to an AFCA convention, and you're looking for your next opportunity, you got to have a game plan about who are the key people that either can hire you or can recommend you,
right.
And that their word would mean something. So that might be former head coaches that you've worked for, or former coordinators that you've worked for, that even if they don't have, a current position open, they've been in the industry for longer and their word means something. So, for me, I sought out Coach Solich this past, I guess it would be 2 conventions ago, 2019. I was let go as a part of the UNLV staff, and I sought out Coach Solich. They didn't have a single opening on their staff. And I just said, hey, if a couple of these guys on your staff make the wrong decision and decide to leave, and get out of this utopia in Athens, Ohio, I want in, and I think that meant a lot to him. They didn't even have a job open, and it took a couple weeks for something to develop. But yeah, the point is, know who can hire you, know who can recommend you, and, seek to make a real, genuine contact with those people.
Absolutely, man. One of the things you said here, and a lot of it occurs when you do have a job, creating those relationships. And I'll rewind back to, it was about 5 years ago, and rest in peace, but DJ Looney, who was a coach down at University of Louisiana who passed this past year, unfortunately. I met him a couple years before, and it was, just ran into him at the convention, and next thing you know, we're having a great conversation. I believe he's working at Mississippi State at the time, and he had been at Central Arkansas, and he knew I was looking for a job when I saw him at this convention, and he said, "You know what? I think they got a guy, but I got to introduce you to the head coach of University of Central Arkansas." And he did. And the head coach said, "Hey, come up to my hotel room." And, I interviewed, and they had a guy in mind. It didn't work out, but I mean, that was 100% off the fact that I met this guy. We built a genuine relationship, and, he took that time to, put me in front of his coach, and I'm forever grateful for those type of opportunities. But it sure didn't happen at that convention. I didn't meet him and he said, "Hey, let me go run you up." It was, it took time. And so that's very important. I'm happy that you're speaking on that kind of stuff. Now, let's shift gears here. You've consistently talked about this term, growth mindset. What habits do you put in practice to develop this growth mindset? And talk to us a little bit about what this growth mindset is.
Yeah. For me, growth mindset is a relentless pursuit of getting better in all aspects. And it's the idea, growth mindset comes from Carol Dweck, but the idea of of not being ready yet, that comes from Kevin Elko, who's worked with the Steelers and Alabama Crimson Tide. And, it's the idea of continuing to try to get better. For me as a coach, that's so that I can be a better coach to the kids, because I'm really aware that there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I think in coaching, the more you learn and the more schemes you're around, and the more techniques and fundamentals you learn, the more you're aware that there's a lot in this game that you just don't know.
Right.
And so for me, I'm, as far as habits are concerned, I read as much as I can, both within the game and outside of the game. I listen to podcasts religiously. That's a habit that I have. I've got a pretty sizable drive for most people. Maybe other people's commute is similar. I've got about an hour commute each way every day to the office. And so I make phone calls, and, I call my mom and dad or my brother or whomever. But a lot of times I'm devouring podcasts. It's an easy way for me to learn and to stay mentally engaged, and to get sharp and to be exposed to different ideas. And for me, that's everything from, AFCA podcast to Gridiron Genius, or, Michael Lombardi's podcast. So things within football, to leadership podcasts, Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic, all sorts of stuff that are just ways for me to continue to grow. Because I think if you think you're a finished product as a player or as a coach, you're going to get passed up.
Right.
And so, I got to keep working, and I got to earn the responsibility that I've been given. And I got to keep getting better, because the kids, that's what they deserve, is a coach that's trying to be the best that he possibly can be. And that connects with the networking piece too. The goal is not to climb the ladder to, rub elbows with, the best and the brightest. The goal is to learn as much as possible from the people that you're around,
right,
so that you can translate that to the kids in the best way possible. And so whether it's networking or it's, growth mindset and trying to, devour podcasts or books or whatever it may be, the goal is ultimately to get better so that we can help the kids, have the best season, have the best careers that they possibly can have.
Absolutely. Coach, as I'm listening to you, man, I love this. I mean, because I don't want to sound like an old person. Like, hey, you remind me of myself when I was coaching, because we're probably pretty close to the same age. But I mean, I did take a lot of this into account, and one of the things I did struggle in was probably that growth mindset in terms of devouring information that wasn't available, in my staff meeting room. Like, I didn't really take advantage of podcasts, and I'm not a big reader. I wasn't going to sit down and read a book or anything like that. But as I'm listening to you, the reason I probably wasn't that is when I was free, meaning I had free time, I was away from the office. I probably didn't manage my time that well. And it sounds like, just listening to how you approach the convention, like you have an agenda. You know what you're going to do in that hour car ride. You're going to make calls. You're going to network. You're going to listen to this podcast. Just kind of springing this on you, but talk about time management a little bit, because that is, in this business is tough. You work a ton of hours. You got limited time with the family. So maybe that growth mindset does get put on the back burner for some of us guys. Yeah, absolutely.
The way that I've learned to approach it is by focusing on what I can control. And so, as coaches, we talk to our players about, hey, control what you can control,
right,
focus on what you can control. And, for me, I'm a position coach. I've got a coordinator that's got, ideas about what, how my guys should be coached and what needs to be done, and a head coach that, dictates the scheme and the culture and all of those things. And, I look at structuring my time and being disciplined, kind of within those parameters a little bit.
Right.
And so for me, I do get to control, I don't get to call the plays, although, Coach Alvin does a phenomenal job, and we've been, a top 10 offense in college football the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But if I have an idea or a scheme that I'm interested in learning more about, hey, I think we should, get under center. I really like, option out of under center instead of out of shotgun. Well, I can go dig in on that for an hour, or find an article or print out an old playbook,
right,
and kind of explore that on my own. And that's, I see those things kind of connecting as far as, having the curiosity, but also, having some structure and some time management that, I don't get to call the plays. I don't get to, dictate the scheme or anything like that. But as a coach, I want to learn the game more. I don't get to call the defense either. But I can listen to a podcast about a defensive coordinator and how he structures, his 3-4 scheme, and, we're 4 down here. And, it has nothing to do with what I do as a tight end coach. But it's just a different way to, approach the game, and right, a different perspective to hear. And so, a big part about being a young coach is exposing yourself to perspectives that are outside of your, general scheme, outside of the, high school scheme that you ran, or outside of the, the cultural values or virtues of your college program, or, where you work now, and kind of testing those things out and mulling them over in your brain. And, if they're worthwhile, then they stick with you and you write them down.
Yeah.
But if they're not, you just let them pass by.
That's awesome, Coach. Well, before I let you go, you did mention something that's very important to you, and that's mentorship. Whether you're the mentor or the mentee, what have you, or maybe a particular story that you have regarding mentorship, whether you're on either end of that, and how that's been impactful in your career.
Absolutely. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm only in the position that I'm in because of the generosity and the help of a lot of people who have been in my life. Starting with my parents. My parents paid for me to go to my first AFCA convention. They sent me lunch money as I was trying to make it into the industry.
Right.
And then along those same lines, I got married as a graduate assistant, and my wife moved across the country twice and took jobs that she didn't love, that weren't in line with her passion, just to help me with mine. And so I'm very aware that inside the game and outside the game, there's been a lot of people who have invested in me. I'm very grateful for Coach Albin, who's our offensive coordinator here. He's been here 17 years. He's been with Coach Solich for 20 seasons. He does a phenomenal job, and he's built into me and seen something in me that at times I didn't see in myself, and I'm really appreciative of that. And him, along with several other coaches, Barney Cotton at UNLV, Darren Justice at UNLV, Travis Burkett at UNLV, those guys, as well as Coach Fuente, who was at Memphis, gave me opportunities. And so I see it as my job to pay it forward, whether that's people that are in the building. So our graduate assistants, that's my job. I take them under my wing. There's no question. That's my responsibility to help them grow, because I'm coaching because I want to help young people grow through this sport. And that goes for everybody that touches the game. I was once an equipment manager, the kid on the side. And, when the head coach said my name, that meant something to me. So, I want to do those types of things to the people that are in our program. And so, I take special interest in helping our student assistants grow, and our graduate assistants grow. But it's not just people in the building. So I'm happy to connect and have conversations with whomever. I'm happy to give, my Twitter handle, my email out, or, however people want to get in contact, because, I just want to help pay it forward.
Coach, well, that's what you're doing right now, man. It was awesome sitting down with you. Honestly, this stuff is beneficial to a lot of coaches who are looking for a better way to maximize their time at the AFCA convention, build better relationships, networking up, all those terms you use. And, hopefully the mentorship piece resonates with them as well. But with that being said, please share your social media handle, your Twitter, email, whatever you feel comfortable with, so coaches can reach out to you and learn more about you and follow your journey and ask questions along the way.
Yes, sir. My Twitter is at Coach Brian Metz. I'd also encourage people to follow at Ohio Football and see all the awesome things that we're doing here under Coach Solich's direction. And then my email is metzb@ohio.edu.
Coach, we'll make sure to link all that in the show notes. And thanks again for taking the time. Much appreciated, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Coach Bryce.